We come to the season of giving, and we see a lot of things happening around us about giving and gifts that we are providing. And it seems to me that probably it is true that a gift helps us to see the heart of the giver. Because sometimes those gifts come and it's because I know this person so well and I'm able to match a gift to that person. Other times it's just a fly-by-night thing. I thought it looked neat, so here we go. There are all kinds of things, but when you think about true gift giving, it appears to me that a gift is an image, a visual representation of the heart of the one who is giving. For a few minutes, I want us to appreciate the gift of God. Nicodemus, John 3, came to see Jesus. Admittedly, he came at nighttime. Maybe he did not want to be known as one who believed in Jesus. Maybe he was a little bit afraid. Maybe he was searching but wasn't sure what he was searching for. But what happened in this chapter unfolds to find out that this gift that God gave, Nicodemus really wanted. We're going to look more at the interchange between Jesus and Nicodemus tonight. But if you'll notice with me the concepts of this text that tell us about the heart of God. When we think about the qualities of a heart, the qualities of a good heart, we talk about a person as a good-hearted person. There are things that we mean, there are concepts that come to mind. And I want to show you that in this text we find some of the greatest traits of what a good heart are by looking at the gift that God gave, the gift of Jesus Christ. We begin in verse 16. For God so loved the world. The phrase "so loved" intensifies the word love. He loved, he didn't just love, he so loved. When I think about this phrase, "so loved," it gives me the image of the texture of God's heart. Texture is something that we can touch and feel and we understand. Maybe it is smooth. Maybe it is rough. Maybe it is hard. Maybe it's soft. The idea of the texture says it's an indication of the condition of the heart. God so loved. Love is choice. This word love is a love that says I choose. I make a conscious decision to love. Because this love that God had did not come from a response to a loving people. The love of God was given to a people who did not even think of Him, didn't care for Him, have despised Him. And in fact, notice the gift that came, Jesus Christ, and what they did to the gift. And yet, God loved them. He so loved them. Truly, the texture of one's heart is easily seen in the gift that one gives. We talk about people who are hard-hearted, people who cannot be influenced and changed. But this texture of the heart of God is soft because He has a soft spot in His heart for us. We use that phrase sometimes. That person has a soft spot in their heart for something. Isn't it interesting? Isn't it a great idea to think how God can have us in His heart? To think how God thinks of us. The only way we can even come close to understanding it maybe is through our relationship in families, what parents feel deep down in their hearts about their children. Regardless of what's happening in their lives, deep down there is this connection. The choice to have a child is the choice to love. God so loved. Number 2, He so loved the world. God has a magnanimous heart. I see the size of God's heart in the extent of His love. He loved the world. Well, it's not hard, is it, to love people who love you? Well, that's simple. In fact, we can have this mutual admiration society where we sit around and we say, oh, I think you are this. And they respond by saying, oh, and you are this. And I tell them, oh, and I love this. And you love this. And we're back and forth. We love each other and we're having such a good time. But then we find someone who criticizes, demeans, undercuts, and backbites. Do I love them? Can I love them? Is my heart big enough to love them? God's heart is big enough to love an atheist. God's heart is big enough to love a criminal. God's heart is big enough to love the stone cold, rebellious of us. His heart size is not limited to good people. His heart size is not limited to those who on a Sunday assemble to worship Him. God loved the world. Another reason why that is so important is, at one time, every one of us was the world. I've not always been in His family. I've not always been His child. At one time, I was the world. So I'm glad that the size of God's heart encompassed the world of which I was a part. And even more so, that it encompasses the world in which at times I dabble, at times I enjoy, at times I fail, but God's heart is big enough to love me still. God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. In that gift, I see the depth of the love of God, the depth of His heart. I dare say, not one of us would volunteer today to say, take my child for everybody else. Oh, there are some indications of those kinds of things. Every time a family sends a child off to fight for the country, They are saying, take my child for this country. Every time a family has a child go into the police force, a fireman, ambulance service, all of those service things, that family is saying, take my child for this country. But to do what God did and be able to say, take my child for the people who spit in my face through him and care nothing about me and treat him the way they did, and still to love them anyway. Oh, the depth of God's heart. He took the very best thing there was, and He gave it to you and me. And when we explore the depth of that sacrifice, we learn truly that God's heart is so deep that it could never be plumbed fully. He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish. I see the standard of God's heart. God's love is not limited. He loves everyone. He wants everyone. But that doesn't mean that there are no standards. Every family sets standards for their homes. And no one home looks like any other one. But in every one of those homes, it would be said or could be said, we love each other. And yet in that love, there are restrictions. There are standards by which to live. The standards don't say, okay, follow the standards or we won't love you anymore. That's not what they're about. The standards actually represent, I love you so much. I want you to be disciplined. I want you to be controlled. I don't want you to have a chaotic life. That's what standards are about. God's heart has a standard. And His standard is really simple to say, believe and you won't perish. There are those who don't believe and they are condemned because they haven't believed. But those who believe fall under the standard of God. God wants us to have a full and complete, or as Jesus said, abundant life. I can't have an abundant life without a standard by which to live. God's heart, as limitless as it is, requires certain things, demands certain things, expects certain things, because that's how we can connect with His heart in a way that it is not chaotic and out of control. God gave His Son. Whoever believes in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. I see the desire of God's heart. What does God want? He wants to be with His children. Oh, we know about that during this time of year, don't we? Don't we make plans to get together with family and friends? What if they don't live here? Don't we travel to see them? Or don't we want them to come and see us? We want to be in their presence. We want to be with them. We want to be around them. We make plans for that to happen. God desires to be with His children. He desires to have a relationship. He wants us to enjoy everlasting life. He wants that because that's where He is and what He is. He is everlasting, and therefore He wants His children to be with Him in that environment. He wants them to come and be with Him. God wants all to be saved, Peter would later say. God's not an ogre. God's not one who is sitting there and counting it up and saying, you know, this person over here, these people, I don't want them. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that they don't get here. Or I'm going to do everything I can to make them stumble and fall and mess up. God desires this relationship with us. So the restrictions that He gives are designed for disciplining us for that everlasting place where He is. Controlled, mature, disciplined children who want to have a life with Him. For God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be saved. I see the concern of God's heart. He did not send Jesus here to condemn. That wasn't the point. He sent Jesus here because we were condemned. That's the point. We were a condemned people, and He wanted to make it right. So He sent Jesus. He sent the fix. He sent the healing. He sent what was needed for a broken situation. He did not send Him to laugh at us. Ha ha ha, you are a bunch of condemned people. He didn't send Him here to poke fun at us, to jab at us. He sent Him here because we were in need. Sometimes people give gifts out of spite. Maybe they give a gift just to prove the one you gave me wasn't nothing. Let me show you what I can do. Maybe they give something that just makes a jab in their lives. It's a gift, but it really had some intention behind it to gig them a little bit. God didn't send Jesus for that purpose. He sent Jesus because we didn't have a chance without Him. And I see the concern of His heart. Finally, I see the openness of the heart of God. The text continues speaking about light. Those who come to the light, that's what He's calling us to do. What does light do? Light exposes, light reveals, light helps us to see something. God is open. He wants us to see. He wants us to know. He wants us to understand. He's not hiding anything. He's not trying to conceal things. He's not trying to play some kind of game of hide and seek. God wants to show, to reveal, to give. Come to the light. But those who don't come to the light, they are condemned already because they've not believed. What happens? One writer said, those who don't come to the light are like someone who turns intentionally away from light, therefore magnifying the darkness of his own shadow in which he then intends to walk. when we turn from God, we turn toward a shadow, a darkness. But Jesus says, come to the light. God is open with us, and He wants us to be open to Him. His heart is wide open to say, I'll tell you everything you need to know. I'll give you everything. I'll give you the desires of your heart. See, there's something about us inside of each and every one of us that most of us take for granted and don't think about. There is a draw, an innate draw that God put inside our hearts to go after Him. Some people deny it, and therefore they live a conflicted life. This denial of this innate draw causes us to have turmoil in life because we're not comfortable. Something's just not right. Some things are right, some things are wrong. We just know that instinctively. God says, come to the light and I'll help you see all of that. And He'll help us see that the things that draw us away from Him, that we find so fascinating, so temporarily enjoyable, that we like, He'll show us the damage that's really being done. But some don't want to see the damage. Some don't want to know their flaws. Some don't want to be told where they've messed up. But God's openness is this. You come to me, and I'll tell you about who you really are and what you really need and want. And I'll give you a life like you just cannot believe. I see the heart of God. I see His heart is soft. That's His texture. The size of His heart is great. Its depths cannot be plumbed. His desire is for every one of us, and He's concerned about every one of us, and He's wide open to every one of us. That's the heart of God. We should judge our hearts the same way. Those same traits that are in the heart of God should be in our hearts, not only to each other, but in response to the God's heart who gave. In the midst of this time, when we talk about physical things and granting wishes and giving what people want, let us not forget that God has topped every possible gift, and everything He's ever done is included in the gift of His Son, straight from the heart of God. If the heart of God draws you, that's what Jesus intends. To come to Him, to be His child, to come out of the world, to come into this special place. He invites you to come and believing Him, trusting in His Word, being immersed to be forgiven of sin that is in life. Today, if you need to come to the Lord or come back to the Lord in response to His gift, we wait for you here if you'll join our shepherds as we stand and sing together.